Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to the Assembly of Osteopathic Graduate Medical Educators webinar series. We're pleased to have you join us for the webinar on managing your student loan debt. My name is Dr. Katina Rue. I'm the chair of the AOGME Education Committee, and I'm going to help facilitate this webinar along with Austin. Before we get started, just to review a few housekeeping notes. The webinar is being recorded and it will be posted in about 7 calendar days on the AOGME website. All webinar participants are in listen-only mode, and if you have any technical difficulties, please use the chat feature that Austin and I will be monitoring. If you have any questions for the presenter during the webinar, please feel free to submit them through the Q&A feature at any time, but earlier is better. And if we have time at the end, Mr. LaSota will respond to your questions. And now I'll introduce our presenter. Mr. John LaSota currently serves as the default prevention counselor at Nova Southeastern University. John is a certified solutions-focused coach specializing in financial health and wellness with over a decade of corporate bookkeeping experience. He's spoken to thousands of graduate students and counseled more than 4,000 young professionals on efficient strategies for repaying federal student loans. John's mission is to provide financial, practical guidance to help others avoid common mistakes and build a sustainable future. Thank you again, Mr. LaSota, for being with us today and for preparing this presentation. With that, I'll turn it over to you.
Thank you. Good evening, everybody. My name is John LaSota. Nova was one of the few schools in the country that actually has a program to teach our students how to repay our student loans so they understand how the student loan system works. As a result, even before COVID, when the national default rate was 11.7%, our default rate was 0.6%. So we're very effective at what we do. I'm going to go over a lot of things today. So I'm going to try to get through the presentation itself as quickly as I can so that we can get to your questions and we can answer any individual questions that you have. I do talk fast, so if you need me to slow down, you let me know that, okay? Today, what we're going to be going over. Okay, we're going to be going over studentaid.gov, the types of student loans, repayment plans. The types of student loans dictate what repayment plans you're going to be eligible for. Loan forgiveness options, consolidation. A lot of you are probably getting calls already for people trying to tell you to consolidate your loans. Loan postponement in case you have any problems and you need some help and you can't make a payment for whatever reason. What happens if you default on these loans? The current situation has some of these plans that are in place blocked at the moment, and we will talk about a little bit about what's going on and how to navigate that, and then what to do if the save plan is removed. So it is a lot of information, so I'm going to go through it as quickly as we can here. First of all, studentaid.gov has all the information you need. It's basically a one-stop shop. It never used to be this way, but it's so much more robust now than ever was before, and it's a lot easier for you. I want to make sure you understand, too, this is a snapshot in time. This is what is going on right now. This could very easily change 3 months from now. So if you're watching this as a recording, do understand that they are changing things rapidly and on a regular basis. We try to update things as quickly as we can, but obviously there's certain situations we just can't avoid. So right now, this is what's going on now, and we'll give more advice later on as we learn it as it goes, okay? Now, the same logins that you used to be able to apply for your FAFSA, to fill out the FAFSA, to be able to get the loans in the first place, is the same logins that you use to access the system. When you get in, they're going to bring you to your dashboard. And it shows you a number of things like how many loans you have, how much you owe on those loans, the interest that's collected, any grants that you may have received. Now, this is a new feature over here with the upcoming payment section. They tell you who your loan servicer is. Your servicer is who you pay. They're the ones who handle they take the money, they divide it to all the banks you actually owe it to, okay? They are also the ones that you contact if there's any problems. They tell you when your next payment date is due and how much that payment date is going to be and how much the amount's going to be. If you click on the Make a Payment button, it will bring you directly to the loan servicer's website. You should all have an account with your loan servicer. Now, when you click on the View Details button, It will show you a further breakdown of how many different loans you have of each type and how much you owe on each one of those loans. Breaking that down further, it will show you each individual loan that you have. It'll tell you things like the type of loan, the school you took it from, the date that that loan dispersed, the status of that loan, whether it's in school, in repayment, or in grace, or something like that. It'll tell you the interest rate for each loan and then how much you owe on that loan. Every one of these details is going to have a big influence on how you decide to repay your loans. Now, if you click on that view details button again for each individual loan, it'll give you the breakdown of how much you owe on that loan, how much interest is collected. But here's the most important thing: the loan servicer and their contact information. Now, I've seen students with as many as 9 different servicers, which means they had to make 9 different payments to 9 different people. And if you have even 2, I guarantee you're going to default at some point, because what's going to happen is you're going to get busy working, especially when you're in residency and you're working a lot of hours. You're going to get busy working and you're going to think, hey, I made my payment, and you're going to forget you had another company to pay. So you want to make sure that you are tracking this and you're using all the information. You know exactly who you have to pay and why and how much you have to pay. The studentaid.gov only covers federal loans, and we basically only cover federal loans. And the reason is because private lenders, when you take a private loan, it is completely subject to whatever agreement you made at the time with that private lender. And since there's no way for us to know what that is, it's hard for us to give counsel other than just you got to keep paying until that paying is done. Now, the types of student loans. You have Stafford loans, which are your subsidized and your unsubsidized loans. You have Perkins loans. Then you have your plus loans, which are the parent plus loan and the graduate plus loan. And of course, there are private loans. Your first and your Stafford loans are your subsidized loans. These are need-based loans. Most of you aren't going to have a lot of these. They are limited to undergraduate loans. And understand, when I say that, the federal government, once you go into repayment, there's no difference to them between undergraduate loans or graduate school loans, other than it changes the timeline on the term of your repayment. Most of these programs, if you have only undergraduate loans, then it's a 20-year plan. But if you have even one graduate school loan, then it ends up being a 25-year plan. But that's the only difference between the two. Now, your subsidized loans are only going to be $23,000 of undergraduate loans. They do have a 6-month grace period. What that means is that these loans go into repayment 6 months and 1 day after your last official day of attendance. They don't care about your graduation date. That's not what they're looking at. You can walk 6 months early or 6 months late. It's what is the last official day that your university has you as that you're attending school. Now, these subsidized loans, anytime there's a deferment period or anytime the government does any postponement, the government will subsidize the interest for you on the subloans. Then we have unsubsidized loans. These are the ones that everybody gets that are $20,250 every term or $20,500 every term, right? These are non-based, need-based loans. Everybody gets them, and your limit for your program on these is $224,000 of unsubsidized loans. They also have a 6-month grace period, so they wind up being on the same timeline as your subsidized loans. However, interest starts accruing on these loans the moment they disperse. So if you were taking out loans all the way back for your freshman year of undergraduate, you could owe significantly more money on these loans than what you remember borrowing. Okay, I can't tell you how many times I'll have a student tell me, oh, I don't know that much, because they aren't accounting for the accrued interest since the moment that loan disperses. Okay. Then we have your plus loans. Now, it used to be that plus loans go into repayment as soon as you graduate. Now they also get a 6-month and 1 day grace period. You have your parent plus loan that has no grace, but most of you aren't going to have this. These are the loans that you take out so your children can go to school. So your parents for undergraduate may have taken out a parent plus loan for you to go to school. Those loans will show up on your studentloan.gov account, on the studentaid.gov account, but they are not your loans, and there is no way to consolidate a parent plus loan into your loans. They effectively act as private loans from your folks to you. Okay. Now, the graduate plus loan. The graduate plus loan is unlimited up to the cost of attendance. So whenever I see somebody borrow way more money than they're supposed to, it's almost always on the graduate plus loan. They have a higher interest rate than all the other loans, and the interest starts accruing since the minute they dispersed. However, Again, once you go into, a lot of people think these are private loans, and they are not. They are federal loans, and they act the same way as unsubsidized loans and subsidized loans once you go into repayment. The interest rates on these loans are they're set on July 1st every single year, and then based on the loan type, that's what that interest rate is going to be throughout the entire academic year. They are going, each one of your loans, depending on the year that you're in, is going to have a completely different interest rate. So that's something you want to pay attention to because, again, the interest rate really matters significantly for how you're going to attack these loans in repayment. Now, the unsubsidized loan at 8% and the graduate plus loan at 9% are the highest that I've ever seen. What offsets that, though, is a lot of you may have had COVID-era loans 2 years ago, which were the lowest that I've ever seen. Now, it winds up being a weighted average and it kind of weighs out in the middle. Also, the Federal Reserve just lowered interest rates in September, which means if you're still in school and you're going to be continuing borrowing for next year, 2 years, whatever it winds up being, these interest rates should be coming down over the next few years. Perkins loans. Perkins loans are need-based loans. They've actually discontinued this program, but as long as your university still has money to be able to function it, some of you might have Perkins loans. These are all going to be from undergraduate. The school is the lender, so automatically you have two servicers that you have to deal with. There is a 9-month grace period and a 5% fixed interest rates on Perkins loans. However, most of you, if you have these loans, they're going to be such a small amount that you're going to want to consolidate these loans into everything else because there are perks that you get from the Perkins loans. After, if you work the right job, they'll write them off after 5 years of service and things like that. But the danger of defaulting because of them is so high that you're almost always better off not worrying about those other perks and just consolidating them into the rest of your loans. Now, private loans. There might be a point where refinancing through a private lender makes sense after your residency years are over and your salary goes way up, once you know you can afford that monthly payment, and only if you can get that private loan for a lower interest rate than what your federal loan is going to be. Right now, that's not the case. The private loans are significantly higher right now than any federal loan is going to be, right? But there are other things you want to look at even when you're doing that. You do not want a prepayment penalty, which means what that means is if you select a 10-year term to repay that private loan, they're going to lock in 10 years worth of interest. And even if you give them more money to pay it off quicker, it doesn't matter. They locked in 10 years worth of interest. You're not saving any money by doing it. Okay. You also want to make sure that you can actually afford those loans because there's no protections on them. There's no forbearance time. There's no postponement time. There's no income-driven plans. It's a very high payment, and you got to keep paying until the payment's done. During COVID, for the 3 years of COVID, the federal government postponed loan payments, but we locked down in March of 2020. By June of 2020, if you had a private loan, you had to start paying again, whether you're working or not. So private loans become a little bit dangerous. They could save you a lot of money if your price point puts you where repaying the loan as fast as possible makes sense. No matter what anybody tells you, there is no one-size-fits-all answer in any finance. It's all depending on how much you borrowed, what kind of medicine you're going into, and what paycheck comes along with that which dictates what your strategy should be. Are you going to aggressively pay off the loan? Is that going to save you the most money? Or are you better off kicking the can down the road for 20 or 25 years looking for loan forgiveness on the back end? That's going to depend on you personally and what your underlying situation looks like. Okay, repayment plans. There are 3 general repayment plans. These function like any loan would. They are based on how much money you owe and paying them off completely at a certain amount of time. There's the standard plan, the graduated plan, and then the extended plan. And then there are the income-driven plans. Right now, those are the SAVE plan, the income-based plan, and the income contingent plan. Now, there was a plan called the Pay-As-You-Earn plan, which I'll cover a little bit later, that they had removed in July, and it seems that they put them back on the applications. We'll talk about that a little bit later, but it's also important that you understand income-driven is the umbrella term for all the plans that are based on your salary. You're paying a portion of your salary, not based on what you owe. Income-based is a specific income-driven plan. So you don't want to get the terminology confused when you're talking to the loan servicers because you say income-based, They'll give you the income based. So income driven is all the plans based on your salary. Income based is a specific plan. If you don't do anything at all, once your 6-month grace period ends, they're automatically going to put you on the standard plan, the standard repayment plan. This is a 10-year repayment. What they do is they're going to look and see, they're going to add up how much interest is going to accrue on your accounts over a 10-year period. They're going to add that to your current principal debt. They're going to divide it by 120, which is one payment a month for the next 10 years. And your payment is going to be the same every single month from payment 1 all the way through the end. The next one we have is the graduated plan. The graduated plan is also a 10-year plan. However, your payment amount starts smaller in the beginning, and every 2 years they increase. The problem with the graduated plan, though, is that general rule of thumb with anything that's interest bearing, the more you pay now, the less you pay over time because you're paying higher amounts of principal over time. Excuse me. The less you pay now, though, the less principal you're paying, so more interest is collecting over on you. So that graduated plan, even though it's the same 10-year window, is going to cost you a significant amount more money. And by halfway through, the payments are going to be a lot higher than that standard plan payment would going to be. Then the last one we have is the extended plan. And the extended plan is a 25-year plan based on what you owe, and there's no reason for you to be on this. The accrued interest on this plan is so high that it gets to be ridiculous. Okay, so here's a chart based on $215,000 of borrowing at a 6.8% interest rate. Now, this is a good number for a lot of you. On the standard plan, you're going to pay about $2,480 a month for that. Oh, excuse me. You're going to pay about $82,000 worth of accrued interest, which means you're going to pay about $298,000. You see how the graduated plan, you're paying $1,700 a month, so it's significantly lower, but those payment amounts will increase, and that'll be over $4,000 eventually. And yet you're paying $16,000 more of accrued interest, so you're paying about $314,000. But on that extended plan, now you are paying about $1,000 a month less, but you're paying $233,000 of accrued interest, which means you're paying more in interest than what you borrowed in the first place, and you still have to pay the principal. So that extended plan becomes a lot more expensive. You don't want to be on it. There's no reason. But I do have to tell you about these plans because they are out there. Also, the graduated plan is the plan that servicers were pushing people onto when they were trying to get the PSLF program. It is the main reason why a large number of students that normally would have qualified for public service loan forgiveness did not, because it does not qualify for that program. And yet servicers were purposely pushing you onto the plan. If the servicer offers you the graduated plan, you do not want it. It is not helping you. Finally, the income-driven plans, and these are the ones you want to hear about. They are designed to make your student loan debt more manageable. So every once in a while, the federal government does something smart. They recognize that if people are not buying houses and all the appliances that go in those houses and the material they need to fix those houses and the cars that you park in the driveways, then the entire economy collapses. Well, if the 45 million students who owe student loans can't buy houses because they're spending all their money repaying student loans, well, then the entire economy collapses. So these systems are designed so that you can pay your student loans in an affordable way and still be able to go and buy the things you always wanted to buy and live the life you always wanted to live, so that make all this borrowing and all this work that you're doing worth it at the end. They are based on a calculation of AGI, which is your adjusted gross income, and your family size. So your adjusted gross income is not your salary. It's your salary minus any contributions to your 401k, any health savings account money that you contribute, and about $2,500 worth of student loan interest. Okay, they will subtract all of that from your salary and then charge you a percentage of whatever's left over. Now, on these plans, you're paying significantly less money than you would on a standard plan. Often, you're not even paying your interest on these for a 20 or 25-year period. So what happens if you're paying a small amount and you keep the interest keeps accruing on you? Well, on these plans, depending on the plan that you're on, they offer loan forgiveness after 20 or 25 years. So say you're on the SAVE plan, it's a 25-year plan. And after the 25 years, you still owe them $100,000. They don't make you pay that $100,000. They give you a 1099 as if they paid you $100,000 and you used to pay off your student loans. And now you're going to have to pay the IRS an income tax based on that number in the last year. Now, right now, the highest tax bracket is 37%. So instead of paying $100,000 to repay the rest of your student loans, you would pay $37,000. It's an enormous break on the end, which means those 8 and 9% interest rates, you're not actually paying 8 and 9%. You're paying closer to 3.5%, 4% when it comes time to actually paying. You're getting an enormous break. It also means that unless your price point puts you where aggressively paying off the loan makes sense and you're not going to get to that loan forgiveness amount, you're actually way better off waiting until the end, because you're losing 60 cents on the dollar if you try to pay extra money more money than they're asking you for. If you know how to work this system, you could not only can you save yourself a lot of money, but you could use the money you're not giving them to profit tremendously. In finance, the most important concept is what we call opportunity cost. You could use all of your money to repay your student loans, but then you won't have it for other things. And those other things are potentially more valuable, like buying your house. Now, what does that look like? Some plans are 150% of the poverty line for your family size, which means they're going to subtract $23,000 from your adjusted gross income and then charge you a percentage of whatever's left over. And then they increase that discount by about $8,000 for each family member that you add to it. Then, if you're on the SAVE plan, for instance, that is 225% of the poverty line for your family size, which means they're subtracting $34,000 from your adjusted gross income before they charge you, and then it's a percentage of whatever's left over, just so you understand what that looks like. Now, who should consider the income-driven plans? Everybody should consider the income-driven plans. Even if you could afford to repay the standard based on the standard plan, you still want to be on the income-driven plan where they lower your minimum payments. When it comes to your money, you always want the ball to be in your court. You want to decide what to do with it. There are times when if that interest rate over time is only going to be 3 or 4% when it comes to actually paying it, but the average return rate in the S&P 500 is 8%. There's a really good possibility you're actually gaining more money by putting the extra money into the market rather than putting it to pay these loans. The other thing is, if you are going to aggressively pay the loans off, there are systems here where you get a much lower payment and you make a much lower minimum payment. They divide that payment to all the loans you owe to the banks, and then they subsidize the rest of the interest for you. And then if you want to give them more money, you could target the highest interest loan and send money to the principal on the highest interest rate loan every single month and incrementally pay off the most expensive loans first and save yourself a ton of money if you're going to be on top of these things and manage it. So you should all be on the income-driven plans. The flip side to that, too, is that a standard plan payment is going to be a lot higher than most of your income-driven plans. You want the ability to keep more money in your pocket if you needed to. So when the money gets tight, you want to make sure that you have access to more of it. So if you look at this, right, this is for a single filer making $223,000 a year. That's about the median income for a general practitioner after residency. If you make $223,000 and you have $224,000 worth of loans, you're a single filer. The standard plan, graduated plan's about $1,000 less. The extended fix is a certain amount. You're looking at $1,700 of each of the income-driven plans, right? Well, what happens, though, if you have a family of 3? Now, you notice how the first few, the general plans, are all the same price. But now you see how those income-driven plans drop a little bit. You're paying a little bit less money in your monthly payment. But what happens in residency? Single filer in residency, you're making $60,000 a year in your residency years. Those general plans, they're still the same. Your take-home pay on a $60,000 salary is going to be about $3,500 a month, unless you live in a high-income state like New York or California, where you're bringing home even less. $2,487 a month is a huge portion of your income. You won't be able to afford to pay your rent if you're paying this kind of money for a student loan, right? But look what happens on the income-driven plans based on a $60,000 salary. You are paying significantly less than you would be paying on those standard plans, and it makes it affordable even while you're in residency. I hear a lot of things when I go through the counseling sessions. A lot of people are going to tell you, you should use your deferment, you should use forbearance when you're in residency. Do not do that. You could potentially cost yourself over $100,000 of accrued interest by using deferment or forbearance while you're in residency, when the income-driven plans make it much more affordable. And generally, because the way that they look, the way that they look at the information and the information that they're drawing for, it won't even be. This is on a $60,000 salary, but it won't even be until year 3 of your residency where you're paying the full amount. Okay, the save plan. Right now, this is absolutely the best plan for most student loan borrowers. Anybody qualifies for the save plan. You do not need to show a partial financial hardship to qualify for the save plan. Now, according to the government, a financial hardship means you owe more money than you make in a year. And that's pretty much everybody, right? Now, one of the things that they're blocking is this 5% rule. It's 5% of your discretionary income for undergraduate loans and 10% of your discretionary income for graduate school loans. That 5%, though, don't count on that. Not only is it being blocked by the courts, and that's one of the specific things that they're blocking, but the loan servicers, you call them 6 times with the same question, you're going to get 6 different answers. You can't trust that they're going to do this calculation properly. The servicer Mohila was just fined last year $7.2 million for sending out 800,000 incorrect bills. So factor in that that's going to be 10% because you can't trust that they're going to be able to prorate this the right way. Now, the discretionary income is 200. They're taking 225% off the poverty line for your family size for this. Only direct loans are eligible. So you have what is called a FFEL loan, a federal family education loan, which is an older loan program that will not qualify. If you have even one, it will not qualify. Now, at your level is a 25-year repayment plan. So you're paying for 25 years and the loan forgiveness is after 25 years. However, any unpaid interest is subsidized. So for a general rule of thumb on the standard plan, for every $100,000 that you borrow, it's about $1,100 in repayment, and $500 of that is interest. So if you borrow $200,000 to get through school, you're looking at a $2,200 monthly payment on the standard plan, and $1,000 of that is interest. Well, if you're making $60,000 in residency and you're only paying $350 a month, there's still $650 of interest that's not being covered. Well, that bill is just going to keep going up, right? Not on the save plan. On the save plan, they will pay the other $650 for you. So once you get on save, you will not owe more. As long as you're making your monthly payments, you will not owe more money than the minute you get on the save plan all the way through that 25 years. And it could save you a tremendous amount of money. Then there's the income-based plan. The income-based, there are 2 different versions of the income-based plan. The first is for not new borrowers, and you are a not new borrower if even one of your loans was before July 1st, 2014. Okay. Now, if that's the case, this is a 25-year plan at 15% of your income, and it's going to be expensive, and you don't want to be on that plan. However, if you have an older loan like the federal family education loan, this is the only one that's going to qualify for that. Then there's income-driven. There's the IBR, the income-based plan for new borrowers, and that is all of your loans are after July 1st, 2014. Now, you must show a partial financial hardship, which means you owe more money than you make in a year. If that's the case, this is 10% of your discretionary income, and it's for 20 years, where the loan forgiveness is after 20 years. Okay. Now, because of the breakdown and because of how they do that discount, because this is 150% of the poverty level of your family size and not 225. So what is the percentage on the AGI for an income-driven repayment plan? Again, for the save plan, it's 225% of the it's a 10% plan at 220, and after 225 percent discount on the poverty line for your family size, and it's 10% on the income-based plan. Okay, so they're both the same percentages. So now for you guys, one of the things the federal government does not account for very well is high income earners. And you're all going to be high income earners. I've never seen anybody that's after residency that's making less than 170,000. Now at that level, you make more money than 95% of the world. So you guys are going to be all high income earners. Depending on what your starting salary is, after getting a 3% cost of living raise every single year. Even though the save plan is the lowest paying option, it's the cheapest option, the income-based plan, because the loan forgiveness is after 20 years, could very easily be the best option for you. Because years 21 to 25 on that save plan could be extremely expensive in out-of-pocket payments. And even with the interest subsidy could cost you a lot more money. So it's something you're going to have to pay attention to. The income contingent plan is the last plan that we look at, but it's 20% of your discretionary income for a 25-year period, and none of you should be on it. You don't. It's the only reason to be on the income contingent plan is if you are a parent who took out a Parent Plus loan for your children, because this is the only income-driven plan you qualify for. Okay. Now, if you are married, they change what they look at. Okay. When you are married, they look at the household income and they're going to charge you a percentage of the household income, which means if you get married, your spouse's income is going to impact your student loans. It could make your loans go up. Now, if you marry somebody who also has student loans, they are going to prorate it. They can't take 10% from you and 10% from your spouse because they have 20%. What they're going to do is they're going to take 10% of the household income and they're going to divide it between the two of you. Whoever owes more pays a higher percentage of that 10%, but it's still the same 10%. However, if you marry somebody who does not have student loans and they're making good money, it's going to make your income shoot up significantly. Okay. And which it's going to make your payments shoot up significantly, and it can make these things really unaffordable. Now you have the option right now on all of the plans, you have the option of filing your taxes married but separate. If you file your taxes married but separate, they will only look at your income. They will not look at your spouse's income, and that can keep things in line where they're affordable. However, first, your accountant is going to scream at you. Your accountant will never want you to file your taxes married but separate. And that's because most accountants don't understand how this works. You could very easily save $5,000 in taxes because you filed a married joint. And that ends up costing you $20,000 worth of monthly payments on the student loan side of things, and it winds up hurting you. But most accountants are aware of that. The reason I have this chart here is because I want you to see that whatever your single filing tax bracket is, the married filing joint is just a doubling of that bracket. So if you're making the same amount of money, you're not getting a tax break by filing married joint. You're paying the same amount of taxes. Now, if it's offset, if you are making a significant amount more money than your spouse or vice versa, the lower salary could lower your tax bracket, which will save you some money. But I've also seen it where the person making more money raises the lower salary into a higher tax bracket and you don't save any money. The biggest thing is on the other side of it is the student loan side of it. If that's making your monthly bills go up, it's not worth filing married. It's not worth filing married joint for the tax side of things. However, there are retirement fund implications in filing married separate. If you do that and the second spouse makes more than $10,000, you are no longer eligible to contribute to retirement funds like the Roth IRA. However, there's also a limit of $153,000 in order to contribute to the Roth IRA. And once you guys hit your residency years, you're going to be making more money than will allow you to contribute to Roth anyway. So these are things you have to consider when you're moving through the system on what to do and what your plan is going to be. In order to apply for your income-driven plans, you'll go to studentaid.gov, you'll go to the In Repayment tab, and to this link, enroll in, recertify, or change an income-driven plan. Now, the numbers that they're looking at your tax return. They're not looking at your tax return from the current year because we're still in the current year. So they can't say what you're actually making. So they're looking at the tax return from the year before. Since most of you guys in your last year of medical school are not working, or at least not making $20,000 a year or more, most of you in your first year of residency are going to get a $0 payment where you don't actually have to give them any money, but it counts as if you do, and it counts towards loan forgiveness. And then in your second year, because you don't start working until July, and at $60,000 salary, you're not actually earning $60,000 in that calendar year. You're only making $30,000. On the income-based plan, your payment's probably going to be about $75 a month in year 2. And on the same plan, your payment will be 0 again in year 2 for most of you. And it's not until year 3 that $350 number winds up hitting you. Public service loan forgiveness. Now, a lot of you are going to be looking for this. In order to qualify for PSLF, 2 things must be true. You must be on a qualified repayment plan. The standard plan and all the income-driven plans are qualifying payment plans. You also must work for a 501c3 not-for-profit organization. So every single payment that you make while when you're working full-time for a 501c3 not-for-profit organization and you're on a qualified repayment plan, will count towards 120 public service loan forgiveness payments. And once you get the 120th payment, they will forgive your loans and there will not be a tax bill. So you can get a tremendous amount of savings through the PSLF program. Okay. Now, according to the federal government, full-time is 30 hours, not 40 hours. You also do not have to work for one entity. You could work for two different practices and work 15 hours a week for two different practices. And as long as you're getting 30 hours and they're both not-for-profits, you would still qualify. It is also does not have to be 120 payments in a row. So your first 3 years of residency could be working for a not-for-profit where those payments qualify. And then your first job after residency is not for a not-for-profit company, so it doesn't qualify and those payments won't count. But then you go to another job that isn't a 501c3 and they will pick up where you left off. So if you're on the SAVE plan and it's not 25 years, it's 25 years worth of payments. So it's 300 qualified payments. If the payment number 250 is the 120th qualifying payment for PSLF, they will forgive your loans at that point. Now, the only thing is you have to understand is that this is not the end all be all. I don't want you borrowing money because you think you're going to get PSLF. The jobs that are going to qualify are going to pay you less. You're going to be overworked. They're the type of offices where the line is out the door. No matter how many patients you see, the line is still going to be out the door. So there's a larger degree of burnout in these positions. Also, just because you work for a not-for-profit hospital does not mean you work for the hospital itself. Often, a lot of you, depending on what you go into, are going to work for a subcontractor who or a third party that subcontracts you out to that hospital. So even though you're working at a hospital that's not for profit, you may not work at a not-for-profit. Okay. The other side of things is if you owe $250,000 worth of loans, but you give up $30,000 in actual salary every year to get the PSLF. Well, over 10 years, it's $300,000 you give up on the front end. So you're giving up more money than you're saving on the back end. Okay, so there's a lot of scenarios where PSLF does not make sense. If you're going for the PSLF program, the SAVE plan is always the best option because it's the lowest monthly payment. You do not want to give them more money than they're asking for, because if you do, the money, poof, it disappears. It's gone. Okay, it's as if it never existed. You're giving them more money than you needed to. Okay, but I mentioned earlier that there are tax bills on these things, right? After the 25 years, you are going to have a massive tax bill. I've heard people say that you can make arrangements with the IRS later on. They've obviously never made arrangements with the IRS. If you have a $200,000 tax bill and you try to make the arrangements with the IRS, they're going to triple that amount. So you're going to be right back in the same boat you were in, maybe even worse than when you first started going into repayment. And then they're not going to be nice about it. They're going to make you give them $10,000 a month, until that thing is paid off. It's not going to be nice. So on the normal income-driven plans, preparing for that tax bill, the monthly payment is not enough. You're going to have to put some money aside so that every single month for the next 20 or 25 years, so that you can pay the tax bill in the back end. Now, if you do it the right way, you put that into an interest-bearing account like a money market account or a high-yield savings account where they're giving you percentages. And not only will you have the money to pay the tax bill in the back end, but you'll actually be profiting off of that. That money will double or triple over a 20 or 25-year period, right? So you can make a lot of money on the system doing it the right way. If you're going for PSLF, you still need to put the money aside as if you're going to have the tax bill on the back end. That way, if you go 10 years and you get public service loan forgiveness, great. You saved a ton of money and you've got a bunch of money that you put aside that now you could use to invest in anything you want to invest it in, or go on vacations, spend it on things, buy things you shouldn't have bought, when you were tight with the money, whatever it is, right? But that way, if for whatever reason PSLF ends up not working out for you, you're still covered and you can pay the tax bill in the back end later on down the road. Protect yourself no matter what, okay? Generally, if you're going to do a job that you're already driven to do and already excited to do, PSLF is a great program. It is not a payment plan. It is a side benefit. But I do not want you taking jobs just to get PSLF, because that could be a road to disaster for you. Okay. Should you consolidate? A ton of you are probably already getting a lot of calls about consolidation. Oh, consolidate with us. We're going to save you a lot of money. They are almost all private lenders. If you consolidate through a private lender, they are not helping you. You are going to have a very high payment. There is no income driven plan. There is no loan forgiveness. And the interest rate right now is going to be higher than what you're paying to the federal government. So it's not going to work out for you. However, most of you are going to want to consolidate as long as you do it through the federal government. Now, unlike a consolidation loan for your credit cards, they are not lowering your interest rates. The only thing they are really doing is protecting your credit score, right? So you could take out a unsubsidized loan and a graduate plus loan each term. If you're in school for 3 terms a year, that's 6 loans a year. 4 years of medical school, that's 24 loans, which means you owe 24 different banks money. You pay your servicer one time, and they divide it to the 24 different banks you actually owe the money to. But that means if you miss a payment, you're not missing one payment, you're missing 24 payments. And since 35% of your credit score is timely payments, if you miss 24 payments in a month, your credit's going to drop by 200 or 300 points. And you can forget about buying that house. You can forget about getting the nice car. You can forget about getting a business loan for your practice. It's not going to happen. Okay. Or even if you got the loan, it'd be so expensive you can't afford it. Okay. By consolidating the loans, it will take all those loans and make them into one loan. And then if you end up missing a payment, it's not that big of a deal. Now, if your price point puts you where you could aggressively pay off the loan, where that's what makes most sense, you don't want to consolidate because you have the ability to target the highest interest rate loans and pay those off first if you do it right, and you lose that if you consolidate it all into one lump sum. Now, if you have multiple loan servicers, like you have a Perkins loan, or if you have one of the older loan programs like the FEL loan, consolidating brings them through one servicer, so it's one payment to one place, and it converts everything to a direct loan. So now loans that weren't eligible for the good loan programs become eligible later on. Now the fixed interest rate, we don't really worry about that too much. Pretty much everything's a fixed interest rate now. You don't see variables anymore. You do get the options for the extended repayment, but that's not going to help. You don't really want. But here, getting the benefit of the better plans absolutely is worth it. Now there are disadvantages where you lose your grace period, but for a lot of you, you're going to want to apply for these plans earlier than later. And so that's actually a feature, not a bug. You lose your Perkins incentives, but like I said, if you even have Perkins loans, it's going to be so small of an amount that those incentives aren't really helping you. But missing payments because you forget to pay the school will hurt you tremendously. So that's not a big deal. The one thing that's going to matter is that do increase your interest slightly. What happens is they take your high interest rate loans and they bring them down. Your low interest rates loans will go up and they'll meet somewhere in the middle. It is a weighted average. And then they round up to the next 1/8%. So if your weighted average is 6.1%, they will round up to 6.125. So it is a slight increase that is still worth it to protect your credit scores over a 20 to 25-year period. Also, if you sign up for auto pay, almost all of these services give a 1/8% discount on your interest rates if you sign up for auto pay. Okay. Now, if you sign up for auto pay, though, make sure they're actually taking the money out. They are automated services, or they make a lot of mistakes. So I can't tell you how many times I've seen a student that defaults on their loans because they thought they signed up for auto pay. The money came out for 4 months and then just stopped. So you got to pay attention to that all the time. Now, when you're consolidating, also studentaid.gov, you go to the in repayment drop, the loan repayment drop down, and then the consolidate loans button. This is pretty straightforward. They guide you through it. And when you do the consolidation application, they also ask you which payment plan that you want. So you're doing both at the same time. So it's it saves you some time on that. So it's pretty good. When should you start the consolidation application? They do not allow you to apply for consolidation before 90 days prior to you going into repayment. So basically 3 months after your last day of attendance, you can apply for consolidation. If you're not consolidating, though, they aren't going to let you apply for your plan until after you fully go into repayment, until after that grace period is over. Okay. All of your loans get 3 years, 36 months of deferment, and an additional 36 years of forbearance. Now, deferment you have to qualify for. You have to show a hardship. Either you're not working, or your house burns down, or something crazy goes on. You have to qualify for deferment, but you get up to 3 years of that. They grant it in 1 to 12 months at a time. Now, forbearance If you owe 20% of your annual salary, they must give you forbearance, and you get up to 36 months of that. And that you could just feel like going on vacation, not wanting to pay them, and you say, hey, I don't want to pay this month. I need to go use forbearance, and they will postpone your payments for that month. Now, under deferment or forbearance, unless it's on them and the federal government told them to do it, they will not count towards any kind of loan forgiveness, and interest will accrue during those periods. So you do not want to use these things if you don't have to. If you could use deferment, use the deferment first, because you don't always qualify for deferment, whereas forbearance, they always have to give it to you. So you're going to want to use the deferment first if you can, and then save the forbearance in your back pocket in case you have to. All right. Now, the thing is, what this means is that you can go up to 6 years of not making a single payment, just making a phone call once every 6 months. So if you go into default, it's your fault. You screwed up. If you go into default, technical default is after 9 months, 270 days of non-payment. Full default is after a year. If you go a full year without paying, your entire balance becomes due. You can't get any future loans. You can't get any future deferments or forbearance. Your wages can be garnished at 15%, which means they're going to tell your boss that you're not paying your bills, and they'll take 15% directly from your paycheck. Your professional license can be revoked, which means you can't work, but you still have to pay the money. Also, that default will show up on your credit scores for 7 to 10 years after it, which means buying that house, getting new loans is going to be very difficult. All right. Now, currently the SAVE plan is blocked. There are 2 particular provisions. You could still apply for it. If you apply for it, what happens is they're going to put you on a 60-day processing forbearance. And if they haven't processed it and put you on SAVE by then, they're going to put you on what they call a general forbearance, which is interest-free. Now, the 60-day processing forbearance, that time does count towards loan forgiveness, but interest accrues. After 60 days, if they haven't done it yet, they are going to put you that general forbearance does not count towards loan forgiveness, but interest does not accrue. They're paying the interest for you. Okay. So for most of you, the SAVE plan is still going to be the best option, especially in residency, even right now with the plan blocked. But we have to see how this is going to go. If they get rid of SAVE, we are going to go back to the old system. That's where the pay-as-you-earn and then the revised pay-as-you-earn plan comes in. The pay-as-you-earn plan is exactly the same plan as the good version of the income-based, except they open up the dates where your loans could be actually a little bit older, and you'll still qualify for that program. So, and generally the pay-as-you-earn plan was the best plan for high-income earners. So for a lot of you, the pay-as-you-earn plan is a better option long-term. If they get rid of SAVE, it's going to revert back to the revised pay-as-you-earn plan, which is 10% of your discretionary income, but it's a smaller little discount. It's 150%, just like the pay or the income-based, not 225. It is also a 25-year plan. However, instead of subsidizing the entire interest that you don't pay, it only subsidizes half of the interest that you don't pay. It is still the best option during residency years. But if you are married on the repay plan, they force you to file your taxes married joint, and they force you to look at both incomes. Okay. Now, there are going to be things that pop up on your student aid account. If the servicers are giving you bad information, they're doing things they're not supposed to do, they're not helping you. You can contact the ombudsman and file an official complaint, and they go after them. If you see loans on your account that should not be there, you can contact the ombudsman, file a fraud charge, and they will fight that for you. Okay. So now this is the end of the presentation. Oh, hold on. Let's see. Let me go back to that real quick. Okay. Now let's see what we have in the chat. Okay. If you choose a standard repayment plan, it's set it at the minimum every month. Is there additional fee for doing that? No. I mean, you don't get to set what the standard plan is. They're going to set it for you, and you have to make that payment no matter what it is. Now, you can move the payment dates around to match with your paycheck, but you can't really do anything. Okay. The standard plan is based on what you owe, and that's the same amount no matter what every single month. Okay. Can you stack the SAVE plan and the income-driven plan? No, the SAVE plan is an income-driven plan. So it's income-driven is the umbrella term. SAVE is an income-driven plan. So that plan is the income-driven plan, okay? To qualify for PSLF, does it depend who is actually paying your salary? Yes, it does. It has to be a 50, it has to be not a not-for-profit, a specific not-for-profit. It has to be a 501c3 not-for-profit organization. If state, local, federal governments apply, they don't care where you work. You get a medical degree and work at your university teaching, as long as it's a not-for-profit organization and you're working 30 hours a week. But yes, you have to be working for a specific not-for-profit organization in order to qualify, okay? Let's see, what else do we got here? If you are a National Health Service Corps scholarship recipient, do you still qualify for PSLF during residency? Absolutely. That does not have any impact. Now, National Health Service Corps, they give you scholarship money while you're in school, and then after school, they also give you repayment money for that too. So you could qualify for getting lump sums. However, usually if you're getting that money, you're getting large lump sums, and you're probably going to end up getting in a point where you don't get through to 10 years to pay the PSLF, okay? Unless you borrowed a ton of money. And then at that point, if you get a lot of money from the National Health Service Corps, either earlier or either for scholarship money while you're in school, you're probably not going to owe that much. And there's a good chance you'll pay off the loans before you get through to 10 years. If you're getting National Health Service Corps money afterwards, if you're getting that money after you leave school, they're going to pay massive amounts, $40,000 a year, things like that, right? So what happens in that scenario is that extra money that they're giving you doesn't change your monthly payments, and you still might wind up paying the same amount on PSLF, whether you got that money after school or not. So if your job is giving you money to repay your loans and you're doing PSLF, and you still end up getting the PSLF, the money you get from your job ends up being irrelevant because the monthly payment is going to be based on your salary, okay? Okay. If you work for a company that offers repayment for your student loans, does that disqualify you from using the income-driven repayment plan? No, it does not, because that is the minimum that you have to pay. There's a couple of ways that you can look at it. One, they allow you to prepay. So you could pay January 1st for your entire 12 months based on your annual salary, okay? And you could use that as prepayment amounts. Or you could put it as a massive lump sum to the most expensive loans. You could put a massive lump sum to the overall amounts. It doesn't change the amount you're going to pay based on your income-driven plan. However, that amount is probably going to be taxable income. So it could increase your taxable income, which will increase how much money you're paying every single month. Okay? Okay, let's see. PSLF is written into our loan agreements, right? No, it is not. PSLF is a side benefit. If you don't work for a 501c3, if you're not making payments on a qualified plan, you don't automatically get PSLF. Now, it's not going to sunset. Somebody had asked a question earlier before the presentation if it's going to go away. They tried to eliminate doctors from getting PSLF, and they were sued in a class action lawsuit and lost. So now that fight was already done. So PSLF will not go away for you. In fact, they've gone back and made more students eligible for it. But you still have to work for a 501c3 and be on a qualified payment plan and make 10 years worth of payments to get 10 years. There's no agreement that you necessarily get it or not. Okay. Okay, does this count into the 10 years of PSLF? Does which count? Now the income-driven plans, as long as you're working for a not-for-profit, will. If you're on SAVE and you're on that processing forbearance, it will. But if you're on SAVE and you are on the general forbearance before they decide what to do with it, it will not. Any forbearance or deferment time generally does not count towards PSLF, the 10 years of PSLF. The only thing that counts towards the 10 years is qualified payments. Working for a 501c3 full-time on a qualified plan, okay? All right. For the SAVE plan, do the Graduate Plus loans get accounted for? Yes. But once you go into repayment, they're all the same. Graduate Plus loans and unsubsidized loans and undergraduate loans are all federal direct. As long as they are federal direct loans, it doesn't matter which of those loan types they are. The SAVE plan, they take a portion of your salary and they divide a portion of that to each loan that you owe. It doesn't matter if it's a plus loan or a unsubsidized loan, and they all qualify for PSLF. Okay. For PS left, does the 120 payments have to be once per month? Okay, no, it has to be once per month. They are not going to let you make two separate payments in the month that counts. It's only one payment that's going to qualify. They're forcing 10 years. Okay, the reason they're doing that is so that you service underserved communities. That's the reason why they're giving you that. Okay, for complicated cases, married with properties, how do you suggest we approach the loan? Well, again, it's going to come down to your price point. Now, the properties, they don't care what your bills are, which is why you have to minimize. You always should be minimizing your bills anyway. But it doesn't matter if you have a $4,000 a month mortgage, you still got to pay based on your salary, and you got to pay whatever that amount is. Okay. If you're married and the money goes up, you got to pay. Now, if you're married and your spouse doesn't work, there are major discounts where they take into account where it's actually costing you less money. How much less compared to the rest of your bills? Well, that's going to depend on your salary. Okay. But yeah, they don't account for any of your other bills. They're just looking at the adjusted gross income, and you got to pay a salary based on that. They don't account for anything else. Does volunteering for a 501? Nope. Volunteering does not count. You have to actually work for them full time. If you see that the monthly auto payment amount is not being withdrawn from your account to pay your loans, who should you contact? That is always going to be your loan servicer. Okay. The best thing to do in that scenario when you're doing this with the auto payments, set your payment up a week before the payment day is due. That way, and make sure you're checking every month. Now, as adults, you should be checking your bank account every week to make sure nobody's getting money that they should be getting out of your accounts. You should be always checking all your financial accounts once a month to make sure everything's there. So set it up a week in advance, and then you could check if the payment didn't come out. Then you contact them and tell them before you get a missed payment. Okay. Does NHSC forgiveness cover Grad Plus loans? It should carry Grad Plus loans. It shouldn't have anything to do with the loan types. Okay. The hardships. I'm not quite sure what the rest of the question is for that. Okay. I think we're done. We got all the questions in. Not bad.
There was one more question in the chat
Okay,
that
let's see.
said, what is the percentage on AGI for income-driven RPP?
Okay, so again, it depends on the plan. Well, it will really, I mean, it does depend on the plan, but the plans you're going to go on is going to be 10% of your discretionary income. Now, discretionary income is they look at your adjusted gross and they subtract the percentage of your family size and then whatever's left over. So let's if you're making 60,000 in residency, right? And let's say you're making 64,000 in residency and you're on the save plan and they subtract 34,000 from your adjusted gross, which leaves you $30,000 of discretionary income. And if you're on a 10% plan, they charge you 10% of that 30,000, which is 3,000 for the year, which they divide by 12, and you end up with a payment of $250 a month. Okay.
So we have come to the end of our time together. And there will be a recording of this, so you can go back and listen if you want to. So thank you, everyone, for being here. And thank you very much, Mr. LaSota, for your expertise and spending time. It sounds like we could have a weekly webinar with you to get through all this information. Thank you so much for being here and for everyone who attended this webinar today. Feel free to reach out to us if you have any additional needs after this webinar closes. Thank you so much, everyone.
Thank you for
Have a
having
great
me.